please do that now. Please accept the recording. And I'm going to share my screen, which means I may have trouble letting people in, but just a quick thing on ClearOps. So as many of you know, ClearOps is the sponsor of this series of webinars on privacy and security in the metaverse. We are really getting into this topic. It is such a fascinating area for us. NFTs has been something that I have actually been researching now for months, specifically when I found that it was something called rug pulls. And so ClearOps is really interested in helping in the area of NFTs and some of the security incidents that have unfortunately plagued this particular part of what we all consider the metaverse. But just to backtrack from that, ClearOps is a privacy and security company. We provide a knowledge management platform for privacy and security ops. And at the end of this presentation, we have a very exciting announcement for ClearOps. So we hope that you will stick around. We will be ending promptly at 1:20. We like to keep these to 50 minutes. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat. And that's it. I'm going to go on mute and let you take it away, George, because I am so distracted letting people in. But I hope you guys stick around for the end of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, my name is George Rosamond. I'm a co-founder of ClearOps and the CTO. My background is in security and privacy tech, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. We have 3 panelists today. Obviously, we're approaching a topic that there's lots of blog rants and Twitter rants about, but there's really no hard, fast, say, NIST guidelines or CISA or no one in security land has come out and said this is the doctrine of security in the NFT. So that's really how we want to start approaching this topic. We want to approach it in a way that, you know, the methodology and the questions of security, the surface area issues, what you need to protect, protocols and methods. That's really what we want to approach today. So I want to start off with our first panelist is Molly Finkel. Molly's experience, I think, really kind of sets the stage for us because Molly is a developer by background and basically takes art and moves it into production as an NFT and is involved in flyfrogs.xyz. So let Molly give a quick intro maybe.
Sure. Hi, I'm Molly. I'm the co-founder and developer of Flyfrogs, and Flyfrogs is 10,000 cute little frogs on the Ethereum blockchain. They were all randomly generated, and we launched September 3rd. They didn't all sell out until October 4th, but so we're about 6 months into this project, and yeah, that's it. We're also breeding tadpoles now, but I'll tell you about that later.
Great, thank you, Molly. Next we have Dylan Blackwell. Dylan, we met over the Twitters. Dylan has been quite active and involved in the entire ecosystem. So Dylan's at CryptMall. Dylan, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just stumbled into NFTs, kind of went down that rabbit hole just a few months ago. Yeah, and I started this project, CryptMall, to try to change some of the rug pulls and stuff. So kind of meshes well, I guess, with this group.
Great. Thank you, Dylan. Finally, and definitely not least, is Kathy. Kathy Myron is at eSilo, and has a background in security. And I guess, Kathy, you want to give us some quick intro?
Sure. So I'm the CEO of eSilo. We are a data backup and cybersecurity company. We primarily help small businesses who don't know how to protect their valuable business information. So not as much in the digital asset space, but more, I'll say, traditional information assets. And my background is I came from a large Fortune 10 company for the first 14, 15 years of my career, and really have been taking all of that enterprise expertise and knowledge and bringing that to the small business market, which is an area that I think really is desperately in need of better security tools, better security understanding. So that's really kind of our underlying mission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, the three of you. So there's a lot of topics to hit, but let me just start with last piece of administrative things. Number one, obviously mute if we don't mute you first, and if you're not a panelist. I think questions in the chat are fine, and we'll attempt to address them. There's also, just finally, if you're joining, this meeting is being recorded. Feel free to hide your video if you're not a panelist, your name. You could put whatever you want, underdog, Wonder Woman, whatever works for you. But we have a lot of issues to touch on, everything drug pulling to doxing and a whole lot of other topics. So let's just start here. I think, Molly, maybe you give us a quick background, because people, I think, are still grasping with the trajectory of what it means to go from a piece of physical art or digital art and actually move it to production in the marketplace.
Sure. So the artist on the project is my husband, Josh, and we just sort of picked up this project and worked on it nights after putting the kids to bed. So we kind of just dove right in, didn't really know what we were doing. Process was drawing a bunch of layers of frog traits. So all the frogs are unique. They have different hats. Some of them wear hamburgers on top of their head. This is serious stuff. So yeah, we took that art. I wrote a little JavaScript script that goes through and randomly mashes these layers together to make the random images. And from there, I wrote a smart contract. So that sort of is your, the how you get everything onto Ethereum. So yeah, you take the art, you put it somewhere, and then you make a little pointer basically from that place on the Ethereum blockchain to that metadata, which stores the name, the description, and then the actual image itself.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, Dylan, you've obviously been very much intertwined in the whole ecosystem of NFTs at this point. Yes, it's immature and it's young, but have you found any particular security considerations from the beginning? With smart contracts and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a few things. A lot of it's just been phishing emails. That's been like the big thing. Some of the smart contracts do backdoors into the code, if you know what to look for. And then you've also seen you hire a developer to make you a smart contract. They'll actually route all the money to their own crypto wallet, which you won't realize until after you've sold a few and you realize the money isn't even coming to you. So there's a big trust thing there too. So if you don't know the code to look for and what to actually look for, I guess, yeah, you could miss something like that pretty easily.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so Kathy, it sounds like to me, the problems of 5 or 10 or 20 years ago are still here. Verifying, not relying on trust, verification on different digital levels. I mean, what would you say, first of all, obviously, when it comes to, say, phishing emails being emails which aren't what you think they are, that are having you click a link or do something that is counterproductive to your livelihood and your privacy and security, leading to some level of compromise. It's actually the most common way compromises actually enter the workplace. So Kathy, any thoughts on this age-old problem here?
It's funny because while the technology is shifting and changing and evolving, right, Web 2 to Web 3, us as humans and all of our deficiencies and kind of weaknesses are still common. And so, yes, you can engineer for some of the challenges that we see in the way that traditional e-commerce and everything has worked. But, you talk about phishing, you talk about social engineering, and inevitably, I tell my clients this all the time, like the weakest point in your security value chain is the humans that interact with it. You can build the best sort of fortified castle with moats and all of these protections built into it. But at the end of the day, you still have to give somebody a key. And if those people aren't smart with how they handle those keys and how they let or don't let other people in behind them when they go through the doors, right, you end up in a similar situation. So I think, the challenges of people being tricked into clicking on a bad link, or, in the case of some things that have happened with other marketplaces recently, somebody getting a malicious NFT and providing permission or access to their crypto wallet, those types of things are going to continue to happen until we both educate the consumers and the players in the marketplace, and also put in some better protections around those things.
Yeah, I mean, all I could say after the three of you spoke, I feel like we need to extend this another 2 hours because there are so many issues entangled in here. Now, Molly, obviously with your own experiences, you've seen what this means in production, right? Have you experienced anything when it came to phishing attempts or any fraud or, breaking smart contracts and so on? Any issues so far for you?
One of the things when we sold out these NFTs was then we have this community and we're in Discord, and we have moderators, then we give them some permissions, but we want to make sure, everyone has 2-factor authentication on, because a big thing we've actually seen with someone will impersonate somebody on the team, DM someone and say, oh, hey, will you test this for me? Or, and most, our community will report things to us that they're afraid are spammy, or they'll say, hey, this isn't you, is it? It's like, no. So our messaging is always, we're not going to DM you. We always will talk to you in the chat first. And we're just always trying to give people a heads up about, looking out for bad links and phishing, things like that.
Right. Just to explain, obviously, if anybody has any questions about acronyms, phrases, or terms used, feel free to bring it up in the chat. I myself have a massive problem with that. This course is essentially for, say, people my era. It's what IRC was or is still. The kind of, and then came Slack, which is what a lot of people are familiar with today in corporate America and around the world at this point. This course is what, for my generation, the previous generation, kind of, they're dipping their feet into online chats and discussions, DMs being private messaging that happens outside of the main channels that are going on. So, Dylan, I assume you're living in discourse land right now. Has there been issues you've seen?
Yeah, so Discord's like the bread and butter for NFTs, really. You'll get the links, they'll DM you, stuff like that. They'll copy, like mine. I've had a couple people that come in and be like, crypt all notifications. And I'll send people in my Discord just links, sign up, notifications of my project and stuff like that. But then I've seen NFT projects actually share their screen and somebody gets a backdoor into the server. And so they'll post a link as a moderator and have like a mint page when they're not there. Their mint's not 2 weeks, but they'll say early mint. And that's really a bad one to look out for, because it's not just a DM, it's actually in your server and on your pages, basically. And it looks more legit basically that way. It's just the social engineering aspect of it all, really.
I think this is a perfect segue for you. What does this mean? How are you verifying? This course is like, yell up in a stadium and say hello. Obviously outside of the basics, right? The basics of, don't take files, don't take links, don't take anything from people you don't know that aren't verified, even from people you know. How would you approach this?
Yeah, well, 2 things. One, Dylan, it's a little hard to hear your audio, so I caught about 60% of what you had said. But what as you were talking, I was thinking it's I'm going to make an analogy to like the early days of eBay, right? The first time when people really started buying things from strangers on the internet who they didn't really know, and there was this level of apprehension, but hey, it seems like a really good deal and it helps me get access to something that, I otherwise couldn't get access to. And so, part of me feels like, yes, there is a level of security that needs to be on sort of the Discord server environment. And I'll be totally honest, I'm not as familiar with it, so I can't necessarily speak to it in great detail. But what I would say is, if you think about that eBay type analogy where over time it became the ratings, right? The community helps to identify people who are behaving or have behaved more or less trustworthy in the past. And the problem right now for this marketplace is everything is so new, right? So nobody has a real history. But I think that is one of the ways that over time you build a reputation, and through that trust, and the more dominant established players become ones that have a track record of operating and working honestly. I think the challenge though becomes is when those people get taken advantage of, right? Where people are impersonating them or, doing, nefarious things on their behalf because they themselves have been compromised. So that I think is always going to be a challenge.
Absolutely. And it's, I'll just say from my background, I'm actually from a world of pseudonymity and anonymity, where it's quite important, from the Tor network. I've been involved in the Tor network for a very, very, very long time. So this is really, I'll say, hitting an area that is particularly interesting to me. Now, Molly, a lot of people on the whole ecosystem, whether it's on discourse or even buying NFTs, I mean, their identities aren't necessarily public, are they?
No, and it's a big shift from, even on Twitter, people will have these NFT accounts that make it very hard to figure out who they are. I mean, obviously, I'm sure people can, but it's a big shift of not being able to be like, oh, let's see what this person's LinkedIn background is or whatever. It's a whole new, world.
So have you made attempts to actually verify people's identity?
I try not to, in the spirit of Web3, if they don't want to. I think now that we've gotten to know people in our community better, we've just naturally, you learn more about people, and yeah, there's some people that I do know their identity, which it's fun. We sometimes say we're like all impersonating frogs, so we have like our frog persona and our real persona.
Well, yeah, I mean, so yeah, that's what it brings me back to is that when this first came up in forums, specifically on web forums, which was still, I guess, Web 1.0, it was always about mod points. You know, you got marked up enough, you were going to get bumped up in the threads and the discussions, because, you know, I've been posting here. I created an account 7 years ago, and I've been posting, and I never say anything stupid, and so on and so forth. Dylan, I'm dying to hear what you're seeing in terms of identity and so on and so forth of what's going on in your world.
You know, prime example, I go by T Wellington on Twitter myself. You know, it's not because I don't want people to know my name. It's just that it's part of the culture, I guess, really. You know, I have a separate Twitter account for it all, stuff like that. So, you know, eventually I will dox, because eventually we'll start throwing money my way, and, you know, they need to trust me a little more. So it kind of makes sense. You know, it's not like they're going to come find me, do something to me security wise, you know. But you also take the risk, you know, once you announce your name, I guess people know you're making money, they're going to try to steal it from you. So it's, you know, one of those things. I don't have any people faking me on Twitter yet, but you know, that marks the success point kind of when somebody's impersonating you. So
I mean, certainly reputation, Kathy, is a big part of what we're dealing with. Oh, I saw you speak at RSA. I saw you speak at Usenix. I read what you wrote on the blog. I know who, you know, you were at university, blah, blah, blah. You worked with someone I know. We all have those kind of verification points that we're using today. Obviously, though, the stakes get a little higher when large amounts of money is involved in resources. That changes the whole paradigm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I keep going back to that eBay kind of example, though, of like, I don't know who's behind any one of those seller accounts, but I know the reputation. I see a track record. You know, our difficulty right now is we're in the process of kind of building that track record. And unfortunately, in an area that is developing so rapidly and is attracting so many people into, you know, flooding into it, who probably don't fully understand a lot of what they're buying, selling, doing, what a lot of the risks are, you know, inevitably you have people who are there to take advantage of that. And so, you know, I think things will sort of flush themselves out over time. I think that to Dylan's point, to the extent that you want something and they're asking you to prove your identity or, you know, reveal certain documents or whatever about yourself, then, you know, if you're comfortable doing it, you know, fine. But you know, I look at eBay as this really interesting kind of microcosm example of, you know, people made big successful storefronts and lots of money, never having to reveal who they actually were behind the scenes. It was just based on their performance. And so I think that's where we need to get to. As a slight aside, what I will say that one of the trends that I saw on the corporate side is, right, traditionally corporate America has been very kind of top down and hierarchical and sort of, you know, people in positions of power direct. And so in a decentralized kind of move, I've been a part of a lot of organizations that started to do more organic teaming and management of work, and, you know, people self-selecting to be a part of different groups and work on different projects versus somebody, you know, kind of top down saying like, this is what you work on and this is what you get paid for. And it's been a really interesting example of self-organization. And to me, what is happening in the NFT marketplace is a lot of kind of self-organization. And yes, there are hiccups and stuff that come with it, but I think that figuring out that model is just like the folks in corporate America have been doing, is going to be really, really powerful to enable all of us to transact and do everything in a decentralized way. So anyways, I think it's interesting to see what's happening here, happening also in other places, but in a very different context. Right.
You bring up the example of eBay. And actually one of the more kind of outlier examples I think of is online poker. Reputation, huge amounts of money in certain realms and so on. And now, Molly, you might be happy when you're doing well with your NFTs, but I assume this obviously money and causes problems, and money flowing on the internet causes problems. I mean, what have you guys looked at this? Have you dealt with it? Have you mitigated? How have you approached this?
I mean, there's the biggest thing is there's really no safeguards. You can, I made this mistake actually myself, where if you have a bad address somewhere, you can send your money to nothing. And we have people that then come to us, like we become their point person for Ethereum, and it's like, there's really nothing I can do. If someone's like big part of the community, maybe we'll help them out with something. But that I think is the biggest thing we're seeing with people that are new to the space, is that there's none of these usual safeguards around how they're moving funds around, which is a little scary.
Right. No, there's no question about that. And I think any place where you're not, certainly anybody over 40 or 50 dealing with cash, transactions, and it's not verifiable. It's like the old person who used to go into the bank and want to see their money in a vault in a bank. We're so many decades away from that era. It's just getting more and more abstracted, which is why actually, Dylan, I'm really curious. Tell us about rug pools.
Rug pools. So yeah, they promise all these things for this NFT project. Some of them go as far as say, we'll give you a Lambo if we sell out, which obviously they can't afford. Some people just don't do the math. You're selling an NFT for $150. You sell 3,000. I'm horrible at math in public, so that's just enough to buy a Lambo and pay the taxes and send it to somebody at the end of the day. And really what they do is they fake the numbers, they fake everything. So they have fake Twitter followers, they have fake Discord bots. They actually pay people to be active in the Discord chat. So the chat moves and people are, they join in the conversation and actually stay. So they're really targeting just selling like 150, 200 of these NFTs at $150 a pop. Then what happens is they take the money and they just run. So they basically pull the rug out from underneath you. Everything's gone. They delete everything. Sometimes they don't delete everything, I guess. Sometimes they leave it up just to mess with the people. But they figured out how to social engineer it and make everything hyped, stuff like that. And then a lot of times what they'll do is they'll use like Tornado Cash, which will throw their crypto money into multiple different wallets and move it all around so you can't even track where it's going or where it's coming from. And then they throw it in their wallet and cash it out, and they made 50,000 in 2 days or whatever, and then just run.
Wow. So a la Ponzi scheme, which I think he was active 100 years ago, almost exactly.
Yeah.
Would you, that's obvious. this is, reliving the same experiences in different versions, right? Where the variables have changed, but they're still the same variables, So, Kathy, what do we do? You're hearing this kind of chaotic ecosystem. Is there verification? Is there tools we have? Is there ways to approach it?
It's a great question, and I don't have a great answer. I think a lot of really smart people are thinking about this, but the challenge is what you're describing is not necessarily a security challenge per se, from my point of view, right? When you have nefarious people who don't intend to follow through on contracts or agreements and run off with your money after you've given it to them, but they've not finished the job. It's, not unlike a roofer. You give him a deposit, he just never shows up. And, yes, you could take him to court because you know who he is or the company's name. Still doesn't guarantee that you're going to get anything, in a scenario like that. But I think you're very much looking at the same thing. So it is a bit of buyer beware. And that's where I think the the track record, the transaction history has to come in. And I think it probably makes it really difficult for folks like Molly who are getting started, who are legit, who create great content, great art, but have to overcome some of these trust challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Molly, I mean, has there been, I know there's a few firms out there talking security with NFTs and the Metaverse and W3 on one level or another. Have you had experiences with them? Is there any particular things you're considering in terms of measures to take?
Honestly, not really. I mean, I did before we launched the contract, I was a little nervous hearing all these things about people losing their crypto or whatever. So I did a little Googling, but I wouldn't say I used any standards or anything like that. There's companies that'll audit contracts for you, and I've seen one of these reports. They're very detailed. But yeah, we're just figuring this stuff out as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll plus one that, because I think from my universe, there's a certain, I'll say, conservatism about approaching this because it's new and it doesn't fit in someone's day-to-day insecurity. So they're a little bit apprehensive to even, dip their toes into it, which obviously causes another set of issues for all of us, because without the security professionals being injected into the conversation, everybody's just kind of blindly, jumping around trying to make sense of it. Dylan, I mean, I think you mentioned earlier about issues with smart contracts. First of all, what's a smart contract and why does it matter? And, what are the issues you see associated security-wise?
You can put anything in a smart contract. So I could make an NFT, put it in your wallet. You interact with it, I can actually drain your wallet of all your money. There's multiple things that you could actually do. I can make it to where you can't even sell the NFT. You buy it, now you can't even do anything with it. I mean, they do have NFT auditing services, much like they do with crypto tokens. They're coming out, but some of them I've seen still don't catch everything. So basically on the smart contract, I don't know how much everybody knows about crypto tokens, but basically every NFT is its own little token, its own little identity, and that's what makes them non-fungible in a sense. So yeah, it's all in the smart contract. There's so many things you can do there, and so many things to look for security-wise as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, give us a quick example of what to look for. A couple of quick things.
I'm not much on the dev side. I did make my own crypto token. I posted it online to validate it and stuff like that. Like, went through all those channels. So crypto's already got some of those systems set up, so it's just transitioning those to NFTs. Like I said, you can make it to where it puts a backdoor. You accept the code into your wallet, it puts a backdoor in, and I can drain everything out. So I can steal all your NFTs, I can steal all your cash, steal all your cryptocurrency and stuff like that. So.
Hi, Kathy. My name's George. I'm starting an NFT and I need some help. I don't know where to start. I have a smart contract. I have the NFT. What would you start with? What would you start asking me? What are the questions?
It's funny. So as Dylan was talking, one of the things that I was thinking of is kind of drawing a parallel to traditional software development code, right? Because again, I think a lot of the problems that we have today translate into this new world, but maybe manifest themselves in a slightly different way. So you think about the fact that we have been churning out software code for forever. And no matter how rigorous our testing and dev processes are, inevitably they still have security flaws that are discovered down the road. And so, these auditing services that you guys are talking about, I think that is certainly helpful for someone who is new to the space and says, I don't really know or understand what are the components of a smart contract that I should have, that I need to look for, right? I don't know how to read code or anything like that. I think that's a great way for people to have a resource, but to kind of Dylan's point about, well, it's not going to catch everything. Well, software vulnerability scanning tools also don't catch anything. And that's a very mature market and that's been around forever. So I think that is one avenue. I am a firm believer in being an educated consumer, not to say that everybody who participates in the marketplace or creates, content needs to be a dev, But there is a level of kind of minimum understanding and knowledge that I think everyone who wants to participate in this marketplace should have. That's their own due diligence, back to like buyer beware. And sorry, my phone is ringing. So those are some things that I think need to be in place. Back to like, hey, you're brand new, how do you get started? To be honest, I'm actually new to this space, so I wouldn't even be able to point you to a specific resource. But what I would say is the traditional mechanisms for how you decide who you do business with, offline, online, I think those all still hold true. So like identity verification, right? Like who is the person that you're buying stuff from? You know, again, I bring it back to a physical world. Like, how do you know you're not buying a stolen Rolex online or from the guy down the street? And so, you know, mechanisms to authenticate and get yourself comfortable with who you're dealing with, what it is that you're purchasing. And if you don't know how to do it, using an audit resource or some other tool, I think is helpful. And then just doing a lot of homework and research on what are the possible scams and ways that things can go bad. And see, are you putting in place the right controls that you would in a traditional sense? I'll give you an example. So phishing emails, like in general, right? Do you have good anti-malware, you know, on your systems? Do you have great email security? Do you have or, you know, the security on your messaging? Do you use multi-factor authentication everywhere possible? Do you practice good security hygiene and governance? And so like some of those principles absolutely apply. You just have to adapt your frame of thinking.
That's great. Yeah, that's I think so much of it is that it's really adapting the best practices, the way we've done things that actually worked, that not doing them has caused problems. Anything from SolarWinds to Colonial Pipeline, some of the larger exploits in the past few years. It's really comes back down to those fundamentals. I think that's very interesting. So Molly, I mean, you know, you have new people coming around. Everybody's kind of running around going, oh, what's this? Is it Discord or Discourse? That was just something in the chat. Where are we? Where are we going? How are you? Is anybody raising the issue of security when they're coming to you, for advice here, you and Josh? I mean, you guys are somewhat seasoned at this point, believe it or not, right? Compared to a lot of people entering the space now. Are you giving any tips on this? Are you hearing any questions from new people?
I think we try and push that information out. I think the community is very good at sort of spreading the information in terms of current scams that are going on. And I think everyone's interested because they want to hear the story. How did this person get scammed, so that I can learn from the next person? So yeah, I don't think the security is the first thing the new people jump in to see, but I think it's a pretty big part of the space. Another great thing about the space is that so much of the code is open source. So you have some more eyeballs on it, and you're naturally going to be able to catch more things, I think, over time. So if you know who to trust, you can maybe trust the guy on Twitter that's like, oh, I went through this new, they'll send these airdrops, or you go to this website, if you've participated in the space, you can claim tokens, is something that happens a lot. So that's a big thing. Is this safe? Do I want to connect my wallet here? And you've got people that are reading the contract, posting on Twitter what they think. Which is kind of a cool thing about Web3.
Absolutely. So just to shift back to the whole question of identity verification, so on and so forth. Apparently, we have a question someone could address. If one of the kind of more highlighted kind of front page tabloid things that have been going on for a while now is doxing. Doxing, in which someone's identity and all the details about them that anybody can decipher online are thrown out, and they're individually attacked. It's doxxing usually, or 1x. Dylan, are you hearing about any doxing or identity related issues where not just people are hiding their identity, but actually being attacked based on their identity?
Yeah, you see that. People will do it for you. So you eventually, like if I want to get doxxed, I will. But it doesn't stop somebody from coming in and finding my information and digging up everything and doing it themselves. Usually a soft dox is just like, oh, here's my name. This is where my general area of where I live, that kind of stuff. I've also seen projects where the founders are like, "Oh, I'm doxxed. Here's my LinkedIn." Well, I mean, it's just a fake LinkedIn account they made like a week ago, you know. And then one last week, they showed me actually government IDs, and they ended up being fake IDs that they actually created this big ruse, and got fake IDs, which don't do the felony. But you know, they did the big ruse to do a rug pull. So it comes down to trust, and you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so security land, I say most of security land maybe hasn't really dealt with the doxing aspect. I think privacy tech people have to a large extent. I mean, going back to Gamergate and before, if anybody remembers that that era. I mean, what are you going to tell Kathy? What are you going to advise me? I'm walking in here blindly. I mean, should I be concerned about what I have online about me? What should be my considerations?
It's funny. So in my mind, and this is just kind of my own personal opinion, I look at doxing and I'm like, what's the goal, right? So kind of back to what Dylan said in the beginning is like, hey, I use a different name just because that's what everybody does, not because he has this, you know, particular concern over his own privacy and everything else. I still come back to the fact that whenever you have a very frothy market with opportunities to make a lot of money really quickly with relatively low effort, you're going to attract people who don't always have the same ethics meter as the rest of us. And so inevitably, right, it's like what we say about any kind of cybersecurity attack. Somebody who is sufficiently motivated will find a way to trick or scam or create or invent, right, the things necessary to come across as legitimate, to convince their prospective victim of who they want to be perceived as. And inevitably with human nature, people will fall for it. And so until, you know, the whole point is not to have any kind of centralized authority or centralized place to go, you know, for recourse when these things happen. But, you know, that's kind of one of the things that you give up in a decentralized world is you have nobody to turn to. The community has to regulate itself. So yeah, it's almost a matter of understanding the risk, like any investment, right? Understand the risk, understand what you can stand to lose. Here's some tips on how to be a smart investor. But at the end of the day, if you want to take the risk because you believe that the reward is greater than what you might lose, then by all means have at it, right? Like, go in educated, knowing, and don't go cry to mama when something goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you one of the phrases you used about self-regulating community, regulating community that regulates itself, I think is wildly important because it goes back to some of the early statements everybody was making. I mean, Molly, how are you seeing this evolving right now? I mean, you went from 0 to today, and obviously your social network has grown, the people you're talking to, the people you trust. I mean, have you seen that evolution? I mean, have you met people, you know, at the coffee shop because they happen to be where you are? Or, I mean, how do you see this evolving?
I mean, just for our project in particular, we started out with no bios at all. We didn't know what we were doing. We just had a website with a mint button for the most part. And we were talking to people in the Discord, getting to know them. Then we went on to have these fake names. I'm still Molecule in this world, which is pretty close. And then I think the other layer of it too is it's not even just to establish yourself as like not a scammer. It's also to establish your project as a good investment. So my husband has a background in toy development. I have a background in web development. You know, how much of that should we share? Should we share where we used to work and then, or anything like that, or where my husband currently works? But slowly over time, we got more comfortable and we're pretty much out there with our full names and backgrounds now. So I think it's just a process. But I think as trend, it seems to me that the trend is going, people want the teams to be doxxed.
I'm sorry, can you say that one last part again? The
trend I'm seeing over time is that people want the teams to be doxxed, to say who they are, for the most part. That's just what I've noticed. Maybe it's just my corner of the space.
So for them to publicly reveal their full identity and their backgrounds and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so I just want to address, just because we have only a couple more minutes left. Let's see. I'm old, so do you need the e-name to be cool, the alias or whatever you want to call it, your pseudonym, to do rug pulls to avoid? Is it cool to use your own name? Is there a recipe for making up names like? Okay, I don't know. That's kind of I think it's a comment as much as anything. But yeah, I mean, obviously, anonymity, pseudonymity, two different things. But obviously, how they work in practice is going to be, in this context, is a different thing. So if you have a crypto wallet, never let anyone your 12 words, your seed phrase, no legitimate source will ask you for it. This is the password in your wallet. Be safe and have fun. Password storage. That's another good session. I think we could do an hour on. It's a very good point. And I'm not sure what Dana was replying to here, but it's exactly the rub. There is no one identified control in the W3 world. Control in the privacy law sense. So, yeah, I mean, does anybody want to reply to any of these comments? We only got a couple of minutes left here.
I'll answer the seed phrase. Yeah, so that's a big one in Discord. They'll try to, take those 12 words that's the backdoor into your crypto wallet. Another big one is like a ledger. It's kind of like a second factor authentication kind of thing to your wallet. So you have to prove every transaction. So even if you were compromised, your wallet was compromised in any way, it still has to be manually accepted on your end. So that kind of saves you as well. So there's safety and security measures you can take to prevent the front end, and then also the back end there is the second authentication. So
before everybody gets to do a quick closing comments, Molly, sorry, Kathy, can you maybe just give us, what is it? I mean, mom, dad, cousin, friend, enemy. How do I make strong passwords? I mean, what is the general guidance you're giving to people? Because it's something that everybody has to deal with. The civilian or the ultra elite hacker. Everybody needs to know how to make and maintain strong passwords. Is there any canned advice you just throw up at the dinner party?
I can answer that, but I do want to also say something about the 12-word seed phrase first, which is I've had people contact me to say, hey, I got locked out of my crypto wallet or out of my something or other. And hey, how do I get back in? How do I back up my wallet? And so there isn't really like a way to back up your wallet other than to keep these seed phrases stored safely offline, someplace where no one else will ever see them, like write it down with an actual pencil. And so, that's kind of like point number one of the idea of backing stuff up, making sure that you have an alternate way to get back into something really important and really valuable like this is, I think is not something you want to forget about. Back to, in the normal world, in our everyday lives, what is one of the most common ways that people get hacked? It's that their password that protects whatever online account gets stolen or lost, either through their own action or someone else's, or because some website that you use that you created that account on, they got breached. And now the password that you use all over the place is out in the wild for people to try on different sites. So all passwords should be unique. They should be long and complex. The more characters, the better. You can Google a simple chart that will show you based on the length of the password and the combination of different characters. So uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols. You can exponentially increase the difficulty for somebody to crack that password using password cracking software. The challenge becomes that at some point, the computing power, right, quantum computing and everything will become so great that, none of that will necessarily matter. Everything will be very easy to crack. And that's also, not that that's the only, but that is one of the reasons why adding a second layer to how you protect online accounts is incredibly important. So multi-factor authentication, all that really means is you need multiple factors, more than one, to protect that online account. It's usually a combination of something password, something you have, a token or a code, and then in some cases, something that you are or some place that you are, so IP address, digital certificate, biometrics, things like that. So multiple factors are being used to authenticate that you really are you when you try to access those online assets.
Yeah, I've been doing a password workshop, maybe 15 years, the same workshop in different forms and different audiences. And people should go to Password Strength in Wikipedia, just pointing to Kathy's point, looking at what MFA is, multi-factor authentication, A widely important conversation and a skill set everybody needs to do. Even you're a civilian, you can't rely on third parties and other people to do that for you. You need to actually understand and learn what you're doing. On that note, I just want to give everybody a quick 30-second, 45-second wrap up here before I throw it back to Caroline at the end. But Molly, you want to give us your takeaway from today?
I think my takeaway is don't be afraid to get your feet wet in the NFT space because we need security people.
That rings true, very true to all my IRC buddies who just use NFT and they make up funny phrases out of it. Dylan, anything you want to chime in on at the end to sum up?
Don't be afraid to ask questions. A lot of people say it's fun on projects, just not considered good for them. But ask questions if you think it sounds too good to be true. This space does that. You just gotta be careful.
Great. Kathy, any parting words?
So as we said before, there's a lot of commonalities in the challenges and security issues from today into the NFT marketplace. If you're not feeling like you're a really educated consumer on what we're doing today, right, in your normal day-to-day life, not even talking about NFTs and everything, feel free to reach out to me. You can schedule time at meetkathy.com. That's where my calendar is. Happy to help anybody kind of with those security basics, because as George has said, there are so many breaches and compromises that are rooted in very basic things that the average person just needs to be a little bit more diligent in the way that they manage their accounts, their access, their online identities, and everything else. And whatever you learn in kind of the Web 2 world will translate over into, you know, what we're doing in Web 3. So those problems don't go away. So now is a great time to focus on getting yourself the knowledge and the expertise that you need.
Great, wonderful. This has been wonderful, and actually an excellent segue into Caroline wrapping up, because I would say that to a large extent, the traditional Web 2.0 problems and the mitigations that we've built over decades and decades really kind of come back up. I'll let Caroline take it from there. Everything from email verification and so on, and the tool that we're actually releasing today. So Caroline, you want to take it?
Yeah, thank you, George. And thank you to all the panelists for joining today. This was a super interesting and very fun session. To tag on to the comment about due diligence and that security needs to get involved, we are, as a company, supporting the effort with our research. We have been conducting research on websites for years. And so we decided to bring that research basically to give it access, to give everyone access to it. And Vivek in the comments asked where you can find out about NFTs, specifically where to buy them and invest in them. So our research is going to focus on NFT marketplaces to start, and it's specifically reporting on privacy and security. So again, thank you for everyone for joining, and we hope you'll check out our new website. And that's it. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you so much. You guys, the three of you just made for a wonderful discussion. Really, really appreciate it. This was nice flow. Everybody coming from different places, but I think it worked, and hopefully everybody profited and enjoyed this. But thank you very much for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. Kathy, great stuff. Molly, really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
appreciate it for you guys. Great stuff. Really enjoy it.